Basics 101. Welcome everyone to Roofing Basics 101. My name is Peggy West. I'm the organizer, and I wanted to open up with the idea behind us that the hurricanes are coming. So let's get partially prepared with this particular basics class. Every year I try to select industry expert speakers. Today we have an experienced presenter who'll cover the roofing basics and give you a solid foundation with knowledge that you need to know to manage your association needs for roofing. Like I said, with hurricane season around the corner, thought it was a good time to feature this topic. So absorb all you can. Following the meeting, I will send you a sponsor sheet, and this will have everyone's contact information from the speakers to the moderator and all of the sponsors that are on today. Feel free to reach out to them for proposals and contacts. They are experts. They're all licensed, insured, and very reputable. So let me cover some housekeeping. Place your questions in the Q&A box, and our moderator will pull them along the way. We are going to be interactive today. And if you have comments, you can put those in the chat box. Sponsors, you can put your contact information in the chat box as well. Our moderator today is Ben Friedman, president of City Quiet Windows and Doors, and he'll take note of everything. Now, if we can't get to all of them, we are recording. We are also recording the questions, and we will send those over to Ed and Philip today, and maybe they can answer them at a later time. Like I said, this is going to be recorded. We will be able to send it out to you following this if you want to share it with other board members that could not attend today. And I want to say, Cams, thank you for attending today. Please allow 30 days. We used to say 2 weeks, but now we're saying 30 days for your credits to be posted. The DBPR is running a little behind, and we need to give Stratus Roofing some time to post as well. So I want to thank the volunteer board members for attending today. And I want to commend you for taking on more education to fulfill your fiduciary responsibilities. So let's get started. Here are today's sponsors. I'm going to start with my co-partner running the IT for the webinar, Vinteum Software. We have Katie Bassford on. She is the National Account Executive for Vinteum. Tell us what you do and about yourself.
Hi, Peggy. Thank you so much for that intro. I have been with Vinteum for about 6 months now, so it's been an amazing opportunity to get to know the team and just really learn the HOA and condo industry. Vinteum provides an award-winning HOA software platform. So whether you're part of a condo association or a homeowners association, we want to hear from you. I would love to do a live demonstration and show you all of the ways that neighbors can benefit your community.
Excellent. Okay. Honorable mention is Jasmine Johannes. She's the marketing manager. Maybe you could just wave. She is the wind beneath my wings with a lot of prep, getting this ready for you. Next, I want to introduce our moderator for today, President of City Quiet Windows, Ben Friedman. Ben, tell us about yourself and your company.
Thank you, Peggy. My name is Ben Friedman. I am your moderator for the day, so feel free to put your questions in the chat. City Quiet Windows and Doors is a full-service turnkey white glove installation company for all window, door, storefront, and railing projects. We are centrally located in Boca Raton. We have an office in North Miami, as well as Naples and Fort Myers.
Very good. Thank you. And thank you for moderating today. Next, I want to introduce Maddie Osmond. She's the Director of Marketing and Business Strategy for Vice Painting. Maddie, tell us about yourself and the company.
Sorry, I was unmuting myself. Hello, everyone. My name is Maddie, and as she said, I'm the Director of Marketing and Business Strategy for Vice Painting. We are located in Orlando, so we service the Central Florida market over to the West Coast Tampa area, and then all the way to Daytona, Cocoa Beach area. So what we do is obviously painting. We do exterior repaints for townhomes, condos, HOAs. We also offer waterproofing services and pressure washing of common areas as well as the buildings. We'll do minor repairs, sidewalk repairs, Anything we can do to help make your community better and safer, we're happy to do it. With hurricane season coming up, definitely important to get that building prepared. So if you want a waterproofing quote, or it's that 5 to 7 year period that you're needing your repaint bids, please contact me. We'd be happy to come walk your property and do what we can to provide awesome service. So thanks so much for having us, Peggy, and thank you to all the other sponsors.
Thank you. And their information will also be on the sponsor sheet. I also want to make honorable mention of Gene Ponder. He's the vice president for Vice Painting, and he's the one that actually started supporting the webinars. So please thank him for me. Next, I want to introduce a support company to Vice Painting, Heidi Larson. She's a business development executive for Florida Paints. Can you tell us about Florida Paints and yourself?
Hello, guys. I'm sorry that I'm not able to do the video side. My technology today is just hating me. So we are a paint manufacturing company. We work with painting contractors such as Vice to provide the warranty, the specification. We actually go on site and do the walkthrough to see what coating systems need to be used on the building to protect your building. We work in the repaint market from my territory. We're all over the state of Florida, but my territory is specifically St. Augustine to West Palm and all of Central Florida and Tampa. So if you guys have any specifications, when you have the repaint coming up, we'll come out, take a look at the building, put the specification together for the painting contractors, then offer the 5, 7, or 10-year warranties. We work with roofing companies as well for the coating systems, that anything that would be applied as a coating, we can help any of the vendors utilize our products. So if you have any questions at all, we do color renderings and all of that, and we look forward to helping you guys.
Great, thank you so much. Great introduction. Next, I want to introduce Michelle Sedlowski. She's the Assistant Vice President in the Home Relationship Management for Commercial Banking and also Home Associations. Tell us about yourself, and what does City National do for associations?
Thank you, Peggy. My name is Michelle Sedlowski. I'm with City National Bank of Florida. We are headquartered in Coral Gables, Florida. We are the second largest Florida-based bank. So we only do business in Florida. We service over 4,000 associations throughout the state. And where I come in on this presentation is we can lend for special projects, renovations, construction loans, anything the association is doing with everything with SERS, phase 1s, phase 2s. We can lend out to 20 years, and we can lend out to about 20 million or so. So we can work with the association and help them get the funds that they need to complete their projects. So I've put my information in there. If they have any questions on how the loans are funded, any loan question, I'm happy to come to a board meeting and address any questions anyone has regarding loans and full association banking services that we offer. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, next I want to introduce Hafer Company. Nicole is not able to get on yet. She's still fighting the taxes with her CPA service. She is a partner and director of operations. They have 4 offices around the state of Florida. You need a good CPA or a evaluation company for your budgets. Great company, Hafer Company, and they'll be on the sponsor sheet. Next, we had a new sponsor, Ray Engineering. We have Suzanne Perkins. She's a director of business development. I'm not sure why she's not on now, but Ray's Engineering, if you need an engineering company, I understand a lot of the engineering firms are looking to expand. So our condominiums may need someone else. You can't find one at this time for all your milestone inspections, etc. So remember Ray's Engineering. The other one is Brightview Landscape. She had an emergency this morning, medical emergency. She asked me to introduce her, and she has telling us that they are full service landscapers providing all in-house services, tree services, irrigation, hurricane cleanup, aquatics, and design. They have the top of the line work order system, very transparent, and that's between the homeowners and the managers. So if you need management for plant health or irrigation, you can call Mia. Heflin. She is the area contact for you. Next, I just want to mention that I also consult for beach and patio outdoor living. It's a full service patio furniture company. And right now I see a lot of the condos saving money because of other expenses by restrapping, reslinging, repainting all your pool deck furniture. It's a great way to get about 25% of the cost down. You're saving 75% by doing all that. So give me a shout if you need something. I'll also be on the sponsor sheet. Okay, I'll take a breath and turn it over to our speaker today. We have Ed Runhke. He's the Vice President of Business Development for Stratus Roofing. And he also has a partner on today, Philip Thomas, also a business developer. And I want to make honorable mention of Chelsea Lintz. Chelsea and I have been working very closely to make this a successful webinar. So Ed, take it away.
No, absolutely. And thank you, Peggy, so much. And, I appreciate all the other sponsors being on here as well. This is how we make everything happen, is by, everybody working together and, putting together great companies that can help put these classes on for you guys, as well as, sponsor to make them happen. Right. So that's how we got here today. I do want to start off, tell you a little bit about ourselves, who we are, before we get into the presentation. And, I already was kind of looking through the attendee list. I know some of you probably do know me. I see a couple of new names on there as well. So I look forward to doing this. Most of you have probably seen me in person. You know that I'm very interactive. So I'm going to do my best to portray everything that I portray in person, over the screen for you guys as well today. But the biggest thing that I do want to get across, and, I'll mention this as we go through the presentation as well, is that this presentation is for all of you guys, right? I want to make sure that everybody that's on here gets the most out of this presentation. You get your questions answered, right? Like Peggy said, hurricane season's coming up, but just outside of that, the insurance market's crazy right now, right? Insurance companies are requesting all different kinds of things. And I'll tie that into, there was a question asked about the association and that you have the tiles on the roof. And can you get an assessment of the roof and know where you need to go? Absolutely, you can do that. As a certified and licensed roofer, we can actually provide roofing certification inspections. We do a lot of work directly for the insurance carriers, so we can actually provide a roof certification for you to your insurance company that would say, hey, you have X amount of life left in your roof, or give you a more detailed explanation of that too. So we'll go through more details about that later, but I did see that there was a question on that. So I just wanted to throw that answer out there really quick while I was tying it into the insurance side of the market. But Stratus, we've, family owned by three families based out of the Central Florida area. We've been in business for over 28 years now. We're a fully licensed roofer and general contractor. We actually started in the management space. So I like to mention that because I think it's very important for people to know where we started and how we got into the role that we got into today. So the Stratus three families, they first started acquiring properties and wanted to rebuild them and get them back rehabbed and put back into the space. The biggest challenge was always finding good partnerships and good contractors that they could work with to facilitate getting these projects rebuilt properly and back restored, whether it was re-roofing, general construction, landscaping, painting, all those things, right? Not, 30 years ago, it didn't exist where we had these great programs that we have today, like Peggy has here, where a bunch of great vendors can come on here. You can ask great questions. They vetted these contractors so that they know that, they can facilitate and help you in these different areas. So because of that, we decided to go into construction ourselves. We started rebuilding our own properties while managing them, and eventually found the niche on the roofing side. So our focus is roofing. We are a general contractor, but we understand the challenges that come along with trying to facilitate getting good contractors, getting, truthful and honest information. And that's our mission statement is leading the industry by putting people first, making sure that we're understanding your wants, needs, and concerns and getting those taken care of, rather than just doing a one size fits all for everybody. So that's really how we've gotten here today. and are in the roofing and contracting space. A little bit more about myself. I've been with Stratus for a number of years now. I'm not sure what I don't deal with on that end anymore, but I focus mostly with doing insurance work. So I do work direct. I have built relationships directly with the insurance carriers and help facilitate getting projects completed for them, as well as, staying up to date with the current markets and the codes and what's going on there, so that we can try and facilitate the best opportunities for the clients as we go through this changing time, right? Because everybody knows right now, once your roof hits 15 years, the insurance company is saying, I need a roof report or you need a new roof, right? And to tie that back into the question earlier, you may not need a new roof, but you need to make sure that the roof is up to speed, right? Not every roof, just like not every paint job or not every, landscaping is created equally, right? So we have to make sure, what was the product? What kind of warranty did it come with? Was it installed properly? There's a lot of details that go in to make sure, is that roof going to last 15 years or is it going to last 25 years? And we just want to make sure that, we get all those questions answered for you today. I also have on here my counterpart, Philip Thomas. I'll let him introduce himself as well. He's here to answer any questions for you, but he's got an extensive background in roofing and distribution as well. So he always is able to facilitate and answer some questions that I might not be able to. So go ahead, Phil.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Philip Thomas here. Been in roofing for about 10 years now, and throughout Central Florida here, and have been at Stratus here recently for a few months, but have worked extensively in the commercial roofing industry. Flat roofs are my specialty. And so if there's any of those kinds of questions that are coming out today, that'll be really where I step in and take over. So I don't really want to step on your toes too much, Ed. Get your presentation started.
Absolutely. And is everybody able to see my screen? I want to make sure, because I don't have it full screen right now, but I wanted to see if the size was large enough that you guys can see it, or if you need me to put it in full presentation mode. Was there any issues there? Or can everybody read that pretty clearly? Good to go. All right. Sounds like everybody can see it. So, and Ben, I don't know if you had any questions to start off with, or if you'd like me to get into the presentation, then we can go from there.
Some of the questions you actually answered already, but I think a lot of them you'll answer during the presentation. Just general questions, being a window and door contractor, there's a lot of similarities as far as hurricane preparation, things to think about before a storm, after a storm, things you can do on an annual basis from a maintenance standpoint. I'm real confident that you'll have a lot of those answers as we go. But if we miss something or I find a hot spot, I'll professionally interrupt and let you know what's going on. And or if there's any questions or comments in the chat, I will be monitoring that the whole time as well.
Awesome. No, I appreciate that, Ben. And that's a great point is, as Ben mentioned, he's in the contracting space as well, windows and doors, and everybody that's on this call, especially, the sponsors, are dealing with a different professional task. A lot of the times when I'm going through my presentation, I'm going to reference, look, this is about roofing, but it's not about roofing, right? Everything transpires over to every single trade that we deal with. When it comes to, RFPs or having the right insurance or having the right warranties, all of those things are important, not just about roofing, but about everything. So I will reference that, but keep that in the back of your mind that is very important to keep there, is that all of this stuff transcribes over to a lot of the different trades. You want to make sure that you're looking at this stuff no matter what it deals with. So I'm going to flip down and get more into the roofing part of it. So know your roofer. And again, right, know your roofer, know your contractor. In any roofing space or professional space for that matter, there's always going to be professional certifications, right? You want to know, how long has that contractor been around, right? If you're offering a specific product, are they, what kind of ability do they have to offer the highest products and warranties for that manufacturer? What type of insurance do they carry? I think the insurance piece nowadays is more prevalent than ever, right? You want to make sure you're protecting your communities and you're protecting your investment. A roofing job is not a cheap job, right? It could be upwards of $1 million, sometimes several $1 million to get a big tile, metal, shingle roofing job in these big communities. And you want to know, hey, I had a bid come in that was $50,000 higher than the next bid. What was the major difference there? It may be that it was a very small company that hasn't even done a multifamily project before, or they carry the minimum level of insurance and they're only paying, $100,000 a year for a minimum policy, while that next company is carrying a $5 million policy. Now, we all know if you have any kind of major issue go on at your house, on your property, who's the next person they're going to come after if that contractor goes bankrupt because they didn't carry enough insurance to protect against an incident, right? We're in construction. We don't want those things to happen, but it is a part of life and we have to make sure that we're prepared for it. So making sure that you're carrying the proper type of insurance. Questions I usually get around that are, what's the right amount of insurance to have and where should that be? It's going to depend on how big your project actually is, right? If you're only doing a $200,000 project and the guy has, $1 million policy, I think that's okay, right? But if you're doing $1 million project or a $2 million project and you have 3, 4, 5 stories high, and there's a risk that people could fall off the roof and have more issues, you really want to make sure that you're protected there and you're not going to have any backlash to the association or to the management company for not having that special coverage in place.
Hey, Ed,
Yep.
to interrupt you, sorry, but before you move on, I just want to add also when it comes to insurance with any project, I highly suggest to the property managers out there and the board members that these insurance certificates that these contractors are providing to you, they should have you all and your association listed as additional insured. Additionally, you should also take the extra step and reach out to the insurance company to make sure that that certificate is valid and it's not something that someone created on their own. So,
absolutely. No, Ben, that's a great point. Is that, yeah, reach out to the insurance company and confirm it, right? Be additionally insured, but also verify. And as we get into the warranties, that's the next part I'm going to talk about is verify, right? It's great that I can offer you a warranty and I'm going to give you a great warranty from the manufacturer, but you want to make sure that the manufacturer is signing off on that warranty, correct? Because they're the ones really protecting that asset for you. And they're the $1 billion company, right? So you want to make sure that the big company is standing behind the work that's being done. And again, the certifications that contractor has with that manufacturer helps. But anytime a manufacturer is doing a large project, they have designated people, and every manufacturer has this, at least in the roofing space and the other spaces, I'm sure they do too. They have reps assigned that will come out and make sure that the project was installed properly to code, to their specification, and that they'll stand behind that warranty. So even if you have a great relationship with a contractor, I still recommend on that warranty side that you make sure that you go through with that. And I think a big thing right now is understanding what warranties do they offer. What are you looking for on your project, right? Every project is different now. I think what I've seen is a big shift in the industry. 5, 6, 7 years ago, everybody was like, oh, I'm just going to put on the cheapest possible system I can get. Now it's, what is the insurance company going to support as far as what system I'm going to put on and what's the best warranty I can get to protect my investment, right? So a good comparison that I always give to people is you can put on a roof with no warranty, or you can put on a roof with the best warranty that has a 25-year workmanship, material, and labor warranty. The difference on that is going to be 10 to 12%. So to risk all of those years of not having a protected asset for 10 to 12%, when you're dealing with your reserves and your warranties and looking at what you're doing in the future, that's the decision you're making is a 10% decision. And I think that that's important sometimes to realize when you're bidding your project, am I bidding everything comparably, right? And it's really important I don't go into detail on it, but we do have a course on RFP, which is request for proposal. It goes through the details of how you should build out a bid so that when you do have contractors bidding, everybody's bidding the same thing rather than getting a bunch of different, random bids in on that. So understanding
I-
those warranties and
Ed,
and
if I
how
might
those
jump
work.
in real quick on the
Yeah, go
warranty
ahead, Phil.
part. So Ed, kind of the end of his statement there said there's kind of three parts to the warranty, which is the labor, the material, and the workmanship. Understanding those three parts are pretty important from my experience in working for manufacturing and working through distribution, who tend to be the ones who solve the problems when there are some that come up, and getting the material back allocated to the project if there's an incident. So if there's a material only warranty, just understand that means the manufacturer made what they said they made, and so the shingle is a shingle, and they made it to the way they make shingles. That's really what the material warranty is going to mean. The labor piece is the manpower to install it. It's not necessarily technically the way that they install it. It's just the dollars that account to the manpower. And then finally, and the most important part of it is that workmanship piece. The workmanship is what accounts for how it's installed. If you go out to a roof and there are too many high nails, it might be disqualified because it wasn't installed properly. Everything was done, but it wasn't done right. So it may not qualify for that warranty because the workmanship wasn't done right, if the workmanship isn't covered under the warranty. So it's important to understand those differences in going through the warranties. So anyways, continue it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Phil. And that's why I like when Phil butts in, because now it made me remember another tangent that I want to go on about the warranties. So that's perfect. So tying back into that is, right, there's the material, there's the labor. Everybody out there has probably heard, hey, I can get a 50-year shingle or a lifetime shingle. And, you know, so then when the insurance company's coming to them in 15 years saying, hey, you got to get a new roof. And they're saying, well, I have this 40-year lifetime shingle on my roof. You know, I don't need to get a new one for the rest of my life. You know, and I know you guys can't interact, but I'm sure at least some of you have heard that before, right? And what does that mean? What does that 40-year shingle mean? What does that lifetime shingle mean actually, right? And that's the details that you have to understand, is making sure that you know the product you're getting, right? That labor warranty is going to make sure that the materials will actually be reinstalled on your project. That's your big expense. The material is not the biggest expense to your project, but also if there's a material defect, that's very different than if there was improper labor done or if the labor malfunctioned, you needed to get it reinstalled, right? So that 50-year, 40-year shingle, what that really means is for the first 10 or 15 years of that shingle, they're going to say if there's any defect to this shingle, meaning that at the plant, you know, some part of the installation may have went wrong and it started falling apart quicker than it should have, they will cover the cost of that shingle, and it'll be prorated over the lifetime or the 50-year period of that shingle. So maybe for the first 10 years, that shingle has a defect, you file a claim, and they send you, you know, a couple bundles of shingles and say, hey, get it taken care of, right? No problem. They feel good because they honored their material warranty because the materials went bad, but you didn't have that labor piece to it, right? Now, you go 10 more years down the road, now it's prorating down every year for the lifetime of that shingle, right? So maybe at year 20, now it's discounted down 80% of the shingle. They might cut you a check for $50 and say, hey, this is what we owe you as part of, you know, your lifetime shingle. Here's a check for $20, you know, feel free to put that towards your roofing project. So making sure you understand the verbiage of what that warranty is very, very important. And talking through that with your contractor or a roofing consultant or somebody that's knowledgeable and that you can work through that with, I think is a very important piece as well. Last couple pieces on this slide is, you know, financial stability. You know, that one is a little bit more obvious, but, you know, making sure that the company is secure, right? If you have a big project going on, you don't want this to be the first project that they're doing of that size for you, right? You don't want to be the test dummy for your new big $1 million roof or $2 million roof. You want to make sure that the company that you're working with has the financial stability that if something does go wrong, and again, it's construction, things can happen, making sure that they can back and right that mistake, right? So one, the reputation of that, but also the financial stability to back it in the case that something may go wrong. And then just knowing what areas they specialize in, right? Like Philip said, he specializes on that commercial side, that flat roofing side. So he's dedicated to all of our projects there and has tremendous experience on that background. I wouldn't want to have anybody else on my project besides Philip when we're dealing with those. But making sure that as a company, whoever you're using, that they do have a known history working in that space, right? You never want to be somebody's first project to say, hey, you know what? We're going to get into, metal roofing tomorrow. And here's a great opportunity. We're going to bid this project and we're going to do it, right? Now, you want to make sure that they have experience, especially, working on these big, large assets of yours. And the only other thing I had on there is just the drone infrared technology. That's something that we've really implemented the last couple of years, which really is big on that commercial flat side of the business, making sure that there's no standing water up under the roofing system. But we can even use that technology to determine, are you having roofing leaks, or is it stucco leaks, or is it window leaks, right? Where is the water intrusion happening? And part of that maintenance stuff that we'll talk about later with Ben is this is a big part of it. We do that on most of our maintenance programs. We'll do full infrared, whether it's the walls, the roofs, or everything, to make sure that you understand, if you do have issues, where they're coming from and how we can get those resolved. All right, goals for today. Learning how to make good decisions about roofing, understanding your roofing company. We have touched on some of this stuff, but we will go through it more throughout the slides. Size, insurance, safety. Safety is probably one of the most important things that you think about on a project, but nobody actually ever talks about it before the project happens or during the project. But it's something that's much more serious now. For those of you, and we work throughout the state, but Central Florida, OSHA just opened up a brand new office here, and they're very excited about going to properties. So making sure that that the company you're using understands the proper safety protocols and has those in place, and a safety plan, very, very important. But again, we will touch more on that later. Understanding the products, the warranties, and the insurance market. So warranties, I know that we touched a little bit on it, but this is just going to be a little bit of a deeper dive into each thing that we've kind of had an overview on. But really understanding, right, reserves versus warranties. That's the biggest thing right now is, right. And I think we're past the reserve studies right now. That I think that just finished up in the beginning of the year. I could be wrong. But making sure that we're accounting properly for what we need in all aspects of construction and the projects that have to go on, right? Since COVID and the last couple of years, we've seen labor prices, material prices have skyrocketed like they never have before, right? Prices are much higher for everything, for everybody right now. You have to make sure that we're accounting for those things going forward, and then comparing that to what the warranty is that you're going to get, right? The insurance companies, the ones at least that we work with, are really standing behind specific products. And those products are not limited to any specific manufacturer. They're limited to what kind of manufacturing guaranteed warranty am I going to get on the labor side, so that the insurance company can feel safer about investing in it themselves into that property, right? So having that big warranty now, before you said, hey, I don't want to pay the extra 10% for it. But if you can get a 10% reduction on your insurance rates, which are through the roof right now, because you have that better product, you have to start to channel all of these things together and understand what's the best opportunity for our community going forward now and in the future by partnering those things together, right? So it's not just, oh, I'm just making a roofing decision right now. No, making a roofing decision that affects my insurance, that may affect, other parts of my building as well. So understanding that you can tie all those things in together to make sure that you make good decisions on behalf of that stuff. Manufacturer warranty for the material and labor. Phil just touched on that and I think did a great job there. So I'm not going to go too far into that. The insurance piece, and I'll keep bringing it up because I can't stress the insurance side of it enough. It's not just important to know what the insurance company may be interested in, but talk to your insurance rep. The same as you talk to the manufacturer's rep when you're getting the warranty, talk to your insurance rep, because right now there's a big push. And look, not everybody understands every aspect of the market, but a lot of the insurance companies are looking for what they want is a full tear off, right? So if you have a roofing system on now, they're not so much allowing you to do roof overs or coverings or coatings anymore. Some do, but you have to make sure that the insurance company you're working with or that you plan to work with is okay with the system that you're going to be putting on. That doesn't mean that they may not decide to change their mind 10, 15 years down the road, but you want to make sure that what you're doing for them is going to help your rates and it's going to help you facilitate what you're doing going forward. If you say, oh, you know what, I'm going to do, I got a flat roofing system and I'm just going to cover over some SPF foam with a single ply system and it's good to go, brand new roof. I'm going to pay a quarter what it would cost me to put a brand new roof on, right? Because I'm just going to cover it. I'm not doing any tear off. I'm doing a simple attachment. Great. You feel good. You got a great price on it. The insurance company says, no, you didn't do a full tear off. We're not insuring you, right? And now that information becomes public, not just to your current insurance company, but the entire insurance market, right? So make sure that you have those conversations. It's a lot to think about, but you have to start to be more proactive about these things to make sure that you're taking care of the investments that you have.
Can I interject something?
Yes, absolutely.
I just wanted to say that, just my experience of calling on condos over the years, one of the things that I had been alerted to a couple of years ago, actually, of the smaller roofing contractors coming in and doing roof patches or roof repairs. And, they present their insurance certificate and then, no one checks it following that. On the smaller companies, I just like to recommend that maybe in 30 days, keep checking, making sure until their job is completely done that they are fully insured the entire project and not just dropping the insurance after they get the approval to move forward. So property manager could probably do that easily, or a board member or director on the board could, just call and verify, are they still insured? And just make sure, because it's, liability.
No, Peggy, and that is a great point because you can insure a project both ways. You can have an umbrella insurance that covers you for the whole year. And then at the end of the year, if I do X amount of work, they're going to say, hey, Ed, you owe us an extra $100,000. Or they're going to say, you didn't do as much work as we thought. We're going to actually refund you, some money. That's the better way to have a policy. But there are companies, and there's nothing wrong with it, but they insure project to project, right? So,
yeah.
And if they're not doing a lot of work, that's a way that they can save money, is by doing project to project, not paying all those big premiums up front. They pay once they get a project assigned, right? To your point, making sure that they keep that throughout the duration of the project. They may have thought, hey, the project's only going to take 30 days, but then there was a back order on the tile and it's not going to be here for 2 more months. Are they carrying that insurance throughout the whole project while they have your roof open? That is a great point, Peggy, to bring up. What type of insurance do you have? Do you have a full policy, or do you have, a project policy, and when is the expiration date of that? That's a really good point. And I would always make sure that you're looking into that. And then again, touching on what Phil said before, warranties mean nothing if they're not properly installed by a reputable and approved contractor, right? So every manufacturer has their list of contractors that, right? It may be, hey, they have the professional status, or they have the gold status, right? Or the elite status. Whatever those statuses are, those are important because that means that they have installed those products properly for that company, but they're also going to stand behind the work. But again, on top of that, don't just trust the contractor. I could be your best friend and I'm doing your project. I still want you to call the manufacturer and make sure that I did what I promised you I was going to do, because they're the ones that are going to stand behind that project for you. I'm going to support it, but when it comes to warranty time, you want to make sure that they say that project was installed 100% correctly. And if anything happens, you're protected, right? You want that stamp of approval. You want to make sure that you get that packet after your project is done with your warranty, and you keep it for the lifetime of that warranty.
Hey, Ed, there's a comment here in the chat, real quick, and I'll just read it out loud and see how you could respond. My insurance carrier doesn't want our roofs older than 15 years. They don't care about 20 and 25-year manufacturer warranty.
Yeah, and that's a great point. The insurance companies are just like everybody else, right? They have their own set of rules and set of standards. What I would recommend is it's very important to shop your policy just like you would personally, right? You shop your car insurance, you shop, different phones, right? Whatever, everybody shops different things at different times. Make sure that you're checking with different insurance carriers. I know that not every one of them feels the same way about it. But having that conversation with them to say, and if you're on, it'd be good to know too, what type of roofing system you have, if it's tile, shingle, or metal. If you have a chance to drop in the chat, I'll keep an eye out for that as well, or Ben, keep an eye out for that. The type of material depends as well. And that's very important right now because on the shingle side, the only company that I have that's offering a 25-year labor and material warranty with an unlimited wind speed is GAF. All of the right to repair work that I do directly for the carriers will only allow us to put that roofing system on. That's shingle only. Now, when it comes to tile, metal, flat roofing, there's different manufacturing material and labor warranties, but none of them are for unlimited wind speeds, and none of them are shingle roofs, Owen Corning. Yep. So they do offer, 15 and 20-year warranties. They don't have that 25-year unlimited wind speed. So that may be a difference there, that if you do bring that up to them and say, if we went with this, would that be okay? In my experience with the carriers that we work with, they are standing behind it. But again, not every carrier is going to stand behind that. So you do have to make sure. But how the law is written now is that you, at 15 years, they can't drop you if you go out, get a roof certification, and if a certified contractor goes out and says that those roofs are good for another 10 years, there's no damages, there's no repairs needed, or there's minor repairs needed, and you get them done, they do have to continue to insure you. That doesn't mean that they won't just drop you for another reason to say, hey, you know what? Unfortunately, we're not insuring that area anymore. They do have loopholes to that. But if the carrier doesn't want your project, you got to make sure that your things are up to date and up to speed. But I would be open to looking at other carriers as well. And there are options for that as far as, the insurance company is steering the ship. That's very true. But there are options, make sure that we talk to the different insurance companies. And there's, I know that there may be some partners that are part of this as well. There's even companies out there that do risk management that will shop policies for you on your behalf and save you the time for that as well. So I would just keep your options open as far as that stuff goes. I wouldn't try to just fit with one carrier. Look, times change all the time. And I tell people that it's an ever growing, changing market. You may have been with that insurance company for 10 years and they've been great to you, but their finances may not be the same as new companies that came on that don't have a bad book of business, right? So you don't have to understand all those markets, but you have to make sure that you protect yourself and your investments. But I would also talk to them about if the manufacturer is willing to stand behind the labor in that specific situation, would that be something they'd be willing to consider? But I would also share that, with other carriers and get their opinions on it. Because I know that there are carriers out there that do weigh that stuff very heavily. So that's important. But thank you for the question. Let's see here. Warranties, roof slopes. Okay, so roof slope, diving into this portion of it. And again, guys, feel free to ask questions as I go through this stuff. It doesn't have to be related to the slide that I'm working on now, but anything that sparks interest to you guys, I know there's a lot of you on there. I know that there's some questions. Feel free to throw them at us, because the question you may have, I guarantee 5 or 10 other people have that same question. So the more information we can share and help get out there, the better. So continue to ask those good questions. I appreciate it. Roof slope. It's very interesting because it has a lot of different effects with the roofing system that you're going to use, but also the price, the safety. And this is where we'll really get into a safety conversation in addition to talking about roof slope. So important asphalt shingles, minimum 2-on-12. And that's really pushing it. But if you have, certain approvals, you can put it on a 2-on-12. But I do have a question for the audience, and if somebody wants to try and answer for you, why is it that we have to use different roofing materials on a lower slope application? Less than 3-on-12, 2-on-12. Does anybody know why we have to use a different roofing material and move more towards a flat roofing material for those lower slopes? I'll leave that out there if anybody wants to take a stab at it and answer it. I will go on to a couple other things while we're waiting here. And if anything comes in, let me know on that. But higher pitch additional costs. I'm going to switch over to that. So there's a few reasons why more pitch alludes to higher costs on a roof. When you do a roof measurement, right? A lot of the times you look at it and you're like, oh, my house is 3,500 square feet. So I'm looking at 3,500 square feet of roofing. Not necessarily true, right? So I see somebody commented in there, to provide proper watershed, certain materials move water better than others. Yeah, so absolutely. So if everybody can see that, going back to answering that question about the lower slope application and why it's different materials, it has to do with the water shedding abilities of the roof, right? So you can imagine, and I don't know if you guys can see me or not, but when the water is flowing down the roof on a higher pitched roof, the water is going to drain right off the roof very quickly, right? As it gets to a lower slope, that water doesn't run off as quickly. So you have to have a better material to protect against possible leaks and water hitting the roof at a flatter surface at a more direct rate as well. So it has everything to do with that water shedding ability, and especially in the state of Florida, the crazy weather that we have, you want to make sure that you're using the proper materials. To add on to that piece as well, especially for multifamily communities, shingles specifically, I find a lot of dead valleys on those. That's where, the roof and a wall section meet, or 2 roof sections meet, and it's a flat section or a very low slope section. I can't tell you how many times I go out there and I find that those are shingled. 1, it's going to wear out very quickly. And 2, that's going to void your warranty immediately. Now, why would you find that? Because it's a lot cheaper for a contractor to just put regular field shingles on sections of the roof than ordering the specific low slope materials that need to be installed and properly adhering and attaching them. So if you do have dead valleys or low slope sections on your roof and you're not sure if they're installed properly, make sure you have a contractor come out and take a look at that stuff, because you're going to have issues in those areas. But more importantly, it's going to avoid warranties for you as well. And that is something that the insurance companies look pretty heavily at too. So even if it's not done properly, it is something that you can get corrected. Back into those higher pitch additional costs though. So obviously with the higher pitch, there's actually calculations to determine how much roofing space that those pitches cover. But the higher the pitch, the more roof area it actually covers. So your 3,500 square foot home inside may actually be 4,000 square feet of roofing area. That doesn't include your hips, your valleys, and different components of the roof that make up all this additional stuff. So when you see an estimate come in and you're like, hey, I only have a 3,500 square foot home, why is the estimate for 4,000 square feet, right? You have to make sure that you understand those different pieces. And on the multifamily side, obviously, that makes up a big, big difference when you're dealing with so many square feet at a time, right? So making sure that you understand where those costs are coming from and how they're associated sometimes help. But the most important part of that higher pitch is making sure that you're using the proper safety equipment on those roofs at that time, right? So anytime you're going over a 6 pitch into a 7 pitch situation, you really should start to put toe boards up on the roof so that the guys working on the roof have a better footing to stand on when they're doing the installation process. So that's a requirement, as well as wearing harnesses on the roof at all times, no matter what the slope is. So you have to make sure that they're using the proper safety equipment. But deeper on that is, if you have a big project, actually putting together a safety plan for what each building looks like for the surrounding areas as well as those roofing areas. So again, sometimes when you see different costs on different estimates, you may see a contractor offered something, but what is their safety plan, and are they wearing the proper safety equipment versus not, right? We talked about OSHA earlier and how they're opening up new offices and they're happy to come out there. If they come out there and they find that you're violating something, that contractor, one, has to pay that fine right away, but two, has to correct that error right away. If they already have two, they could possibly get shut down. Now you have a situation where your project shut down and the roof could be wide open, right? So you want to make sure that those proper safety protocols are in place. And I don't say those things to scare you, but more so to just make sure you're prepared to handle those situations as they
Hey,
come.
Ed and Phil, I got a question here. I'm just gonna interrupt you as I go.
Yeah,
I'm not trying
absolutely.
to
Go
cut
ahead.
you off. What materials are used for low slope roof?
Phil,
I
you
guess
want to
the
jump in on
question
that one?
is what materials are more common used is probably what they're referring to,
Yeah.
or preferred.
So what gets installed most often these days is usually going to be either a TPO roof or a modified bitumen roof, which is the granulated, looks like shingles just in a sheet. Those are the two most common. You'll also see some PVC, some fiber tight, or coatings. If you are trying to buy yourself a little more time, you can also see some coatings or some spray foam for that sort of purpose. Those are the most commonly used materials currently today. You might also have tar and gravel. You might like a built-up roof where there's loose gravel on the top holding it down. There are a couple other styles, but those are the most common that we see out there right now.
And each style serves different purposes depending on where it's being installed and on what roofing system. So really, it's a conversation of what fits best for your community and what you're looking for, but also what the project is and what the cost associated with it is and what ties into your system, right? So if we're talking about those dead valley areas, right, you're more going to look for like a modified bitumen, right, Phil, or something like that almost looks, you can match it to the color of your shingle. So you're not going to see anything crazy different. Now in those positions, you can put a TPO or a PVC. There's nothing wrong with that install, but it's perfectly fine to put it's called a mod bit or modified bitumen there that matches your shingle color. So it blends in a little bit more, but it's the proper material to tie in with your roofing system if you do have those. And Ben, did you say there was another question as well?
Nope, not as we speak. We're current.
Okay, perfect. So I think I
Before we
wrapped
jump
up.
off this one. Let me take one more thing before we jump off.
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
one.
Go ahead.
Once you get over 12-12, 14-12, now you're talking about really getting a man lift in place. These are the mansard roofs. If any of you have like a flat with the mansards that are on the outside with your shingles and stuff on the outside, but it's flat on the top, that's likely going to be a 24-12. These are things that it's not walkable at all. These are where you need machinery in there to be able to get the manpower up to install all of this. So if you have that style of roof, just know that comes with additional equipment, additional cost because of that sort of difficulty.
Absolutely, yeah. And length of project, right? It's important to know how long the project is, and things of that nature, so you know how long to expect those communities to be there and the materials to be there. Roof slope versus warranty, right? We touched on this already, but just making sure that you install those proper materials based on what your slope is and what type of roofing system you have. Like Phil said, with those mansard style, there's a specific way that you have to even install them, but there's also different parameters around how they're installed and where they're installed and things of that nature as well. So just making sure you're not only following the code for the county, but you're also following the manufacturer's specifications. Typically, the manufacturer's specs are everything that the current code is, plus additional work. So just because the county inspector comes out and says, hey, your roof was installed great, good to go, that doesn't mean that it was installed to the manufacturer's spec. So making sure that you're understanding both of those so that you're appeasing the county, but you're also appeasing that warranty that you're going to have. Next, that brings us to the roof deck, right? So we talk about the slope, now the roof deck. This is really the first system, the first part of your roof that's there. You have a deck, whether it's a flat roof or whether it's a sloped roof, whether it's shingle, tile, metal. You're always going to have some type of decking that you're going to attach your system to. For the purposes of this presentation, we're going to mostly just talk about the different types of wood, dealing with, shingle, tile, and metal roofing. So the two main types of wood that you'll see, CDX plywood, OSB plywood. There are pluses and minuses to both of them. For the most part now, what you'll see on new construction is you'll see OSB. The reason for that is it's a little bit cheaper. That's like that oriented strand board wood. Now, the biggest negative that I hear about it is that if it gets exposed to water or excessive moisture, the ends can tend to, fill up with water. They're less likely to drain out, and it can cause where you kind of see like the wood presses together and you see those waves on your roof. That could be a cause of this, as well as not using proper spacing. So the only reason your wood is going to get wet, though, is if you leave leaks unattended for a long time, or if you don't have proper ventilation, which we'll go over later. But having proper ventilation will avoid that moisture buildup, and having the roof installed properly will avoid water intrusion on that wood. So I don't want to push and say it's really a negative. It's just making sure that your roof is taken care of properly, and that a proper thickness is installed so that it can support the roofing system you have as well. Obviously, a tile is going to require a thicker and more in-depth look at your truss work and your decking, rather than a shingle, which is much lighter. So you have to make sure if you do want to switch, you have to check and make sure that your system is able to actually make the switch. If you have a basic, OSB decking, it may not support that weight. So you have to make sure that when you do that transition, that you look into those things as well. Because if you're doing a full redeck, that could be a big expense to your project. CDX is just a veneer grade C and a veneer grade D. Two pieces of wood glued together. Tends to be a little bit more sturdy, a little bit more water resistant. So if it does get wet, it dries out a little bit quicker. People like it. It's more aesthetically pleasing. When you're walking on it, it feels a little bit more sturdy. But again, depending on the thickness that you get, both can appear sturdy. One thing about the nailing, the OSB actually has a higher pull test, and that's because there's so many of those pieces of wood glued together that if you put a nail into it, it's tougher for that nail to pull out. So that is a positive to it. But again, when you're making the decision for your re-roof, you just want to make sure that you know what are the positives and negatives and taking care of that. If you're doing a repair or replacement and you're not doing a full redeck, you obviously want to replace whatever's there. If you have OSB there now, replace it with OSB. If you have CDX there now, replace it with CDX. You don't want to mix and match that just to say, oh, I have one better piece of plywood over here. It's not going to serve as good of a purpose. You want everything to match up and make sense there. The 1/8 inch spacing, that's required now. It wasn't, and it was pretty common practice, but you want to make sure that when new plywood at least is going on, that you do have that 1/8 inch spacing. It even helps even more for the insurance and to keep that spacing, to have those, they're called H clips or hurricane clips, can actually go between the ends of the plywood to help keep that separation there, so you don't have that wavy bowing up on your roof over time. And it actually helps keep the plywood held down and things like that as well. So those things are very important to make sure that you're looking at. Another thing is that, and this is several years back now, but the code changed to make sure that the nailing patterns are 6-inch on center on the trusses. Typically how you'll see that getting done is once everything is torn off your roof, the guys will chalk a line down your truss center, and you'll see them up there nailing every 6 inches on center. That's for code. The county will look at that as their decking inspection to make sure that it's nailed properly. Most companies, I would say it's almost standard that they just go up and nail it just to make sure. But especially if you have an older project that hasn't been done in 15 or 20 years, likely it won't have the proper nailing pattern. So you want to make sure that that's getting brought up to code, because again, all of these things, and you don't want to just count on the county inspector, right? Not that they're not on top of it, but say that that county doesn't have a decking inspection and they don't look for those things. If they come back and even the manufacturer finds out that this wasn't nailed properly, or the insurance company comes back and finds out after a hurricane that this wasn't nailed properly, they may try to get out of covering things. So you want to make sure that everything is done to code, done to spec. The best way that I always tell everybody that you can get this stuff, and not just roofing, but any project, make sure you have a project manager that's sending you updated photo reports on every building, either weekly or bi-weekly, so that you have up to date of, hey, these are all the things that were done to code. This is how this was installed. This is the decking. This is the underlayment. This is the shingle. This is the tile, right? This is the drip edge. You want to make sure that you're getting those updated regularly so that you can at least review them. You're not going to know everything, but at least as long as you have a few things that you can request and ask for, it'll keep your contractors on their game and make sure they're looking at that kind of stuff. All right, moving right along with the roof. We hit the deck. Now we're going to hit the underlayment, right? So there's several different forms of underlayment now. A lot of times when you're pulling up old roofing systems, you find that felt paper that's been almost deteriorated at this point by the time they take it off your roof. Felt paper is considered 15 pounds. The code now is 60 pounds of underlayment. So if you wanted to do 4 layers of felt paper, you could. I wouldn't recommend it. It's, because it's a natural, ingredient as well. It tends to, decay and fall apart more easily. It tears very easily. It's not as water resistant. And the biggest thing to know about underlayments as well is having water resistance, but not vapor resistance, right? So it has to be able to breathe, but you don't want water to go through it. So the new products that they've created in more recent years are much more up to speed with being able to allow for better water shedding, but higher vapor and airflow to keep your deck cool, keep it breathing, but also keeping the water off of your system. So those are more of a synthetic. So the synthetic underlayment, which you can see in this picture here, that counts as 30 pounds. So now if you do an install over a wood deck and you're going to do a synthetic underlayment, you do have to double layer it. So you lap it every 19 inches over, and that's going to cover 2 layers over top of the entire thing. So that way you make sure that the entire roof is double layered and you're taken care of from there. Something that the inspector will look for that's very important, you may or may not be able to see it, but on this underlayment on here, you can see like little circle marks. Those are called striker marks. And again, manufacturer specification and code specification. In most times, you have to hit every striker mark with a tin tag or with a simplex nail to adhere that to the roofing system, to adhere that to the deck. They'll look at it. If they find one area, sometimes you can shingle 25% of the roof. If they find one area that's missing a few, they may make your contractor pull up all those shingles. So making sure that you're getting those photo reports to show the proper installation of the underlayment is important. The last type of underlayment that we have is peel and stick. That's going to be, you're going to find peel and stick under all of your tile, under all of your metal. That's going to be a high temp peel and stick that's meant for dealing with higher temperatures, and it's a stronger product. The reason for that on tile is more of an aesthetic. Your underlayment is really your waterproofing barrier of that roof. But you can get peel and stick underneath shingle as well. When we talk about those big warranties, the 25-year workmanship labor warranty, they have a full peel and stick under that. What's the reason for that? It's the best system that they provide. It's the thickest system. You only have to put one layer on it, and it counts for that 60 pounds. But it's fluent, and it goes on as one sheet. There's not nail holes and everything, so there's less likely that there's going to be issues there, right? So at a minimum, I would make sure that you're getting peel and stick in your valleys and at your edges and around your penetrations. But if you're not going to go with that expensive product, make sure you have them there. Otherwise, you can go with the synthetic, which is a good option as well. Phil, you got anything to touch on with underlayment?
Not really on this one. Underlayment's pretty straightforward. Use good ones.
Sounds good. And again, guys, if you have any questions about any of this stuff, what's the best products to use, what times to use them, feel free to throw them in the chat. We're happy to answer those questions. So moving along to the next section, we got drip edge here. So the do and don't section, I make sure that I always point this out first because I think it's important to see there. So it says, you see the do and don't with the drip edge, and you see the drip edge is kind of sticking out a little bit off there because there's a 1-inch fairing strip behind it. So if the drip edge is going directly against the fascia wood, you do need that 1-inch fairing strip to go behind it to create some separation so that the water can drain off properly. The only case that you don't need that is if there's already a metal or aluminum fascia cover over top of the fascia wood. Then you can put the drip edge directly against that. And it's fine. So you just have to make sure that you're installing that properly. That's one of the biggest things we see at communities now is you go out there and all the fascia wood's rotted and needs to be replaced, right? How can you keep up with that? If you have the little extra money to spend, I recommend putting an aluminum or a metal fascia cover over it. That's going to be the best protection for you, and it's going to really seal up and finish that roofing system. But if you don't want to go that route, make sure that you have your fairing strip in there and make sure that you're getting it painted regularly, right? Reach out to one of the painting contractors on here and say, hey, I need to get this painted because, it's starting to peel. You don't want that stuff to rot because that's when you can start to, can have a trickle effect, right? That fascia is tied up right up into your roofing system. That starts to rot, things start to crawl into it, or it starts to wear out on your roofing system. It can affect, different things there. So you really don't want that to become burdensome to your roofing system. So make sure that you're taking care of that fascia. The drip edge itself, that's going to be put on the rakes and the edges of your roof. You want to make sure that is installed properly, like I said, for the water shedding ability, but also making sure that you're following the proper nailing pattern. I recommend the same as what the Coast and the Miami-Dade Code does, which is 4-inch nailing pattern on all of your drip edge, just to make sure that it's really sealed down. But I believe the Central Florida area, you can still do 8 to 10 inches on it, but I would always be better safe than sorry. Look, there's more important codes in place for a reason, and nowhere in Florida is safe from hurricanes. We've seen that over the years. Once that drip edge comes up, your starter shingle is attached to that, and then your rest of your shingles and your roof are attached to that drip edge. So if you don't install this properly and it starts to peel up in a high wind, now the rest of your roof is coming along with it, right? So it's very important that you get this installed properly and taken care of properly. So it may not be something that you hear of commonly, but it's a very important part of your roofing system. And again, ties into affect your warranties and everything else that goes with your roofing system as well. So you really want to make sure that you're taking care of that properly and installing it properly.
Sealing it up. It needs roof cement on top of it to make sure it's sealed and no water gets underneath it.
Yep. So yeah, exactly. So once you put those nails on it, right, you have to put bullet roofing cement on top of it, adhere those starter shingles to it properly. And when we get into the starter shingle, that'll be important too, to know there's a specific shingle designed just for the start of the roof. That's not the same as a field shingle. So you have to make sure that you're tying in the right pieces. The next part is roofing penetrations. This is something that's very, very common with associations that I like to bring up. Another popular thing now is solar panels. So I like to bring that up, and not to hurt anybody's feelings on solar panels, but if you're a roofing manufacturer doesn't offer the solar panels themselves, it's very unlikely they're going to warranty the roof if you go and put solar panels on it after you just put your new roofing system on. Make sure that you ask those questions before you go forward with your roofing system. But we work with all the top manufacturers. They're not warranting that roof if you put
They'll exclude that section of the roof.
They'll exclude that section, right? So if there's a penetration all over your roof, everywhere within 15 feet of your entire roof where those panels are is excluded. So and it just depends, right? Maybe you only do it on half your roof, but you have to make sure that you look into that stuff.
So guys, just me being an outsider looking in here, what would you recommend for someone or some entity that wants to, put solar panels on their roof, or put some sort of, we see buildings that may even allow a cell tower, in the area, let's say, not necessarily on the roof, or even, some form of advertising. What do you recommend when it comes to that?
Absolutely. So just knowing what you're getting into with it, right? So you may say, hey, you know what, if a lot of roofing contractors also install solar. So maybe the roofing contractor, you can negotiate with them to give you an extended workmanship warranty from them. Now, make sure that they've been around for a while before they're offering you a 10-year warranty and they've only been around for 6 months, right? But I would work with them. If there's a specific manufacturer that does offer solar, they'll want you to put their solar product on with the roofing system. So those options do exist. What I will say from personal knowledge, from what I've seen, a lot of the roofing manufacturers are backing away from that model. My assumption would be they're backing away from that model because they can't find a way to make it work to where they can offer that big warranty and also have all these penetrations in their roof and trust it. So I would just take precaution with that. The best thing you can do if you are going to install that is do put a full peel and stick down on your deck, because that's going to be the best way to really adhere and seal that roof better than ever. And again, having the conversation with the manufacturer, if they will warranty it, if they won't, maybe have that conversation with your roofing contractor to say, hey, you're doing both of these for me. Would you be willing to give me a bigger workmanship warranty for the full package, right? And give you a little bit more peace of mind there. So that's something that you can look into, but just always proceed with caution. Another big thing with associations, satellite dishes, right? And I'd say they're becoming less common now with the streaming services that we have, but I still do see them, right? You talked about cell towers, satellite dishes, anything that's not part of the roofing system. The manufacturer is going to avoid an area around that penetration that you put on the roof. So just be aware of that. And I don't know, look, every community has different bylaws as to what they allow and don't allow. If it's a master policy, they're responsible for the roofing system, but they may not be responsible for what the homeowners individually put on their roof. As an association, as a board member, as a manager, if I'm responsible for those roofs, I would make sure that my bylaws protect me from everything that's installed on those roofs as well. Not everybody might be happy about it, but if one guy's roof is causing a leak 3 neighbors down because they want a satellite on their roof, now who's responsible? Is the homeowner responsible? You don't want to get into those battles. So I would just be proactive about it. Talk to the manufacturer to make sure that you have a good set of standards within your community to protect yourselves against those things. And just use YouTube TV now, right? That's I think that's the best option you can do. Go the streaming services, they're all out there now. We're really getting away from the more of the roof penetration. So I would just say my recommendation, I'm in the industry. I don't put any of these things on my personal house. Take that for information for what it is, but that's my stance on it right now. I don't want to impede on the insurance company, and I don't want to impede on my manufacturer's warranties either. Another piece to consider, not just the manufacturer's warranty, but is also the insurance, right? If you have solar, the insurance companies are all aware now. If you have solar on your roof, thousands of dollars to detach and reset it if there's storm damage to the roof, right? So not only are they replacing your roof now, but they're detaching and resetting all of that solar or potentially replacing it. So that's going to jack up your insurance too. And I don't say that stuff to scare you. I say that stuff again, just to make sure that you know of the investment and the decisions that you're making going forward. The biggest thing for me, right? I'm in the education space. I want you to be aware of everything that's out there. You make the decisions with that information as you want. But I like to facilitate that so that people can make good decisions on behalf of that stuff. But if you ever have any questions specifically about penetrations, what penetrations to use, what not to use, we're happy to answer those questions. I'm not going to go too deep into the ventilation part of this because I do have a ventilation slide later that will touch on what the best ventilation systems are and making sure that you're reaching your ventilation goals as well. So now we get to the starter shingle, right? So now we got through the decking, we got through the underlayment, we got through the drip edge. Now we're going to start putting some shingles on the roof. Something that we find to be more common than you would think is that starter shingle is part of a manufacturer's warranty. Certain counties it's code. I don't know if every single county in the state of Florida it's code on, but you definitely want to make sure that when you're getting your project installed, I wouldn't even want to see a bid that didn't include starter shingles at this point in time. They're better for your roofing system. They're specifically designed to be lower, more aerodynamic, and adhere properly to that drip edge and your start of your roof. You want to make sure that you're using these. And again, it's part of that manufacturer's warranty, but it's part of everything to make sure that your roof is sealed and put together properly. There's a right way and a wrong way to do things. But you'd be surprised how often we go out and we call it a flipped shingle, but they just take a regular field shingle, cut it, put it upside down, put it at the start, lay the new shingles over it. What's the problem with that? That shingle is not designed to be there. Number one, it doesn't have the proper seal strip, but it's also twice as thick as a starter shingle. So if you're looking at trying to avoid having wind uplift and things like that, automatically, you're more compromised to have to deal with that stuff. So making sure that you install it properly to code requirement and manufacturer spec. Nailing patterns. Now we're getting into, installing those products on the roof. 6 nails per shingle. So couple ways you can make sure that that's being done properly. The first is getting that photo report, right? Making sure that you're seeing the proper install of the shingles. And you don't need a picture of every single one, but make sure that you're seeing a pattern. How else can you know that they're doing it right? You listen, right? So anytime a roofing project is going on, you listen. And you're going to hear, typically the guys will do 5 in a row. They'll go pop, 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 pop. And then there'll be a pause for a second. Then they'll nail that 6th one to make sure that it's spaced properly. But what you want to see is on this picture on the left, there's a designated area on your shingles for where it has to be nailed. If it's above or below, it can affect, leaking issues with that shingle. It also can affect going into the shingle below it properly. So you need to make sure that these are nailed properly in the right place, the right amount of nails, but also the right spacing. there's a lot of detail that goes into just one shingle being installed. So, right, you listen, you look, but this is something that you really need to just make sure is done properly. Commonly, you might see shingles slipping down on a roof, right? Or even tiles slipping down on a roof. What's that caused from? Overdriven fasteners, right? So there you drive in, shingles are heavy. You might not think it. You look up at the roof, it just looks like it's a flat surface. You walk on it, it doesn't look that crazy, but you pick up a bundle of shingles for the first time, there's some weight to it, right? So even if you overdrive 2 nails on a 6-nail set, over time that weight is going to be constantly bearing down on those additional nails that are there, and over time they could slip down. Wind could get up and get under it because it's not holding properly. So the picture on the right, you can see improperly driven, that middle X, that's an overdriven, right? So if you're going through the shingle, you can possibly have slips later on. Underdriven, you can see, is that first X. Phil touched on that earlier, nail pops, right? So an underdriven nail can cause your shingles to be popped up, but eventually can put a hole in the shingle above it. It can also cause major leak problems in the future. And in Florida, people are surprised when I say I go up on their roof and I found 2 nail pops and they got all this water poured into their house. Well, it's because of how much water we have coming in. But what happens is, as the water starts to get into there, it creates a trickle effect to where it builds up. And it may not drop in right away, but it builds up over time, and then it all, drops down at once. So making sure you're looking for nail pops. Sometimes how you can see those is you might look up at your shingle roofing system and see shiny spots up on the roof. It might be because a few nails popped out through the shingles, and now those holes need to be fixed because those are going all the way through your underlayment into your decking system. So you have to make sure that that's done properly. The third one, X, is, I think, more self-explanatory. It's driven in improperly sideways. That first one with the check mark, that's what you want to see there, is, that flat head, flat even with the shingle right down into it. What causes these to happen could be calibration of the nail guns, right? So making sure that, right, you want a continuous project going on, but the weather changes drastically in Florida. We might just think it's hot all the time, right? But when you start a project in the morning, it might be 50 degrees, and by lunchtime, it's 95 degrees. Those shingles were sitting out overnight in 40, 50 degrees, and it may take a little bit more power to put that nail in properly in the morning than in the afternoon. That could cause underdriven and overdriven nails. So we just want to make sure that they're calibrating those nail guns properly. How you can check for that: listen, visually you can see it. In the mornings, they should be checking to make sure that their nail guns are properly calibrated and they're installing properly. But
after lunch.
Yep, all these pieces tie into each other, and you just have to ask for pictures, right? That's the best way you can do it. But if you are a little bit more involved, feel free to ask questions. No contractor that's trying to hide something is going to be afraid to answer questions for you. Hey, why are you doing this? It's because we're calibrating our guns. We have to check to make sure that they're nailed in properly, right? Or on devil's advocate, right? You could say, hey, I saw another contractor doing this. Why aren't you doing this every morning, right? And it could be that, hey, look, the weather is normal this week, and we're calibrating it up on the roof or something like that. But right, don't be afraid to ask those questions. You don't want to be overbearing some, but you also want to make sure that you do ask those questions. And it makes you look a little bit more knowledgeable to your contractor as well. So even if you take 10 or 15 questions away from this presentation, that when you're having an install going on, you say, you know what, when we're going through the project, I'm going to go up and ask the project manager these. It might take him a step back and say, hey, you know what, this board member, this Cam really knows about roofing. And you may not, but you can have that appearance so that they know, hey, we really got to be on top of our stuff. They're asking some good questions here. And I see a couple of things here. about the timing purposes. I know that we have allotted for 2 hours. This is only a 1 hour CEU course. So if people do need to jump, that's more than fine. I know that we've been talking for more than an hour. I want to make sure that I'm answering all the questions that you guys may have as well. That's the most important part. But if you do have to jump, you will still get credit for the course. Just make sure that Peggy has all of your information. But I know that everybody has been on here for over an hour. But if people want to stay, we'll probably be wrapping up here in the next 10 or 15 minutes or so and take some questions and let Peggy do her closing remarks. So, but if you do need to jump, that's more than okay with me. Double check with Peggy though. And then I'm okay with that. And yes, the presentation is going to be shared. If you want to, you can send Chelsea or Philip your information, and we'll make sure we get it to you. But we do have a master list as well, so I'm pretty sure that we're going to just send out the presentation as a master list, and go that route. And if you have any other questions, Phil, I don't know if you put your information in the chat. Feel free to. Chelsea already put her information in the chat, so any follow-up questions you have, feel free to reach out to us before or after. We're happy to answer any of those questions as well. So we are available if you guys need any of that.
Yeah, I'll interject and just say that when I send the sponsor sheet out, I'll send the recording and the link and the sponsor sheet, of course. So I have everybody's info on there.
All righty, perfect. Thank you, Peggy. So I'll get back into it. I got a couple more slides here, and then we'll wrap up and let people ask some questions if they have any, and we'll go from there. But just moving along with the roof, we're going to the hip and ridge shingles now. And again, similar on all projects, right? Tile, you're going to have specific products for those as well. This is our basics course, but we do have 6 other courses that we offer. A more intensive roofing course. We have a flat roofing course, a general construction course, an HR course, and a how to RFP course. So if you guys ever have any questions about that stuff, feel free to ask. We're certified to educate on any of those things. So, but for now, we'll stick to what we got here. Hip and ridge caps, another area that less common now, but you will see that people try to get away with using field shingles. You can see on the right side, obviously they don't fit properly. They're specifically designed products for specific areas of the roof for a reason, as there is for every area of the roofing project. So we just want to make sure that we're really taking care of those pieces and looking at the right products were used. Where does that begin? With your RFP, right? And that's a different class, but with your RFP, the specific materials that you want installed on this roof, you can be as specific as a manufacturer or a warranty, but making sure that it's listed out. Proper drip edge and installation, proper hip and ridge shingles, right? Proper field shingles, proper starter shingles, and those specifics for any type of project, right? But you really want to see the specifics of that and how it ties into the warranty so that you're protected on a lot of those things. Another part of it, actually, I'm going to talk about that when we get into the ventilation, so I won't get too far ahead of myself. Flashing. So flashing can be a big problem or it can be an easy problem, right? I think the biggest thing that we run into is you want to make sure that you have clear communication about your flashing, right? So you're going to have wall flashing where the roof meets the wall. If you have stucco, it's going to go back behind the stucco, or hardy board or siding, it's going to go up behind that siding. Anytime a roofing project is done, we're not going to know if that flashing needs to be replaced. And certain warranties require it to be replaced, but you're not going to know that it needs to be replaced until that roofing system is pulled up. So it's very important to know when you're bidding a project, what are the extras that could possibly pop up on this project? And we could say, look, based on what we're seeing, we don't anticipate that to happen, but just know you have 1,000 linear feet of flashing that if it's damaged may need to be replaced, and what those costs associated are. Because if you have it behind stucco, are you going to go back with a counter flashing over top of the stucco that may not look as clean, but it's a cheaper option? Or are you going to go back with cut the stucco, put the proper flashing in, and re-stucco back over it and paint it to match? There's those details that you really need to make sure you understand when you're going into your project, because you don't want to get to the end and say, oh, you know what? We didn't budget for this, for these what ifs. So now we're going to go back with this counter flashing that may not look as good on our system, and the homeowners think it's ugly, right? So you really want to make sure that you just have these conversations up front and know what to expect, and say, hey, look, we're not foreseeing these issues, but this is what could happen if we do come to this situation. How do we want to handle it? Do we want to go back and cut the stucco and go behind it? Do we want to counter flash it? Do we want to put a step flashing in, right? What you see on that top right picture. How do we want to go about this to make sure that at the end of this project, the community is happy and we made sure that we took care of everything that needed to be taken care of here? So again, just make sure that you're thinking about these things when your project comes up. I know it's a lot, but we will share the slides with you, and we're always available. Make sure you ask these questions, because you don't want surprises at the end of a project, unless it's a good one, right? Unless it's like, hey, we needed no new flashing and you're going to save $100,000, right? That's the only news that you want to have. You don't want to find out, oh, by the way, all the flashing was bad and you owe an extra $250,000 that you had no idea was coming, right? So having these conversations about all your projects and understanding them is very important. And, just to press the importance of, Peggy putting together these programs, you have great vendors here in every aspect of the business that can help answer questions for you. I personally know most of the vendors that are on here today, and I work very closely with them. Nobody's going to say, don't call me and ask me a question. Pick up the phone. We're here for you. Feel free to reach out anytime you have any of those types of questions.
We got one about flashing right now.
Yep.
Correct size required, recommended. So there's a few different applications to that. Typical sizes are 4x5, 5x7. If it's a tile, there might be a return 1-inch flashing on that. It really depends on the project and what roofing system you have and what roofing system you're going to. But there are really those 3 options are the most common you'll see.
Those are the most common, and yeah, based on code and your roofing system is going to depend on how far up do you have to go up the wall, how far do you have to go behind the shingle. But you want to make sure that's discussed before the project as well. Make sure that you get the specifics outlined as far as what those look like, so that you are reaching the code and the manufacturing specs. So, and again, those could be different, right? Code may say you got to go 4 inches up the wall and 4 inches under the shingle. The manufacturer may say you got to go 4 and 5 or 5 and 5. So every time we look at that, it may be a little bit different. It's going to be similar, but I don't want to cookie cutter it, because it's not always the same. So we do, if you have a specific project though, we're happy to take a look at it and answer those questions for you. And again, just where could you find these flashing points? Head wall, step flashing, valleys, chimneys. And with the associations, you guys don't deal with chimneys that much, so I'm not going to go into too much detail there. Skylights are something that I didn't touch on this on the penetration point. I'm going to give you guys my opinion on it, because I like to give my opinion on things. You guys have probably picked up on that by now, but skylights are beautiful, right? They let the natural light in. It's very, very nice. I do think that the skylights have come a long way from where they were in the past. There are specific ones that meet code, but again, it's another penetration on your roof. That's going to need to be flashed, need to be tied into the roofing system. Will the manufacturer warranty around it? In most cases, yes. but they are very protective about it being done the right way. If you have an old skylight, do not tell me or anybody else that you want to keep it. It's being replaced with a new one. Assume that that's going to be part of the new cost, because the manufacturer is going to want a new one. They're not going to want that old rusted metal and detailing that was done 25 years ago. I'm dealing with a big project right now, and I think that this will help you guys understand that. They have huge custom skylights all over their clubhouse. And it was great at the time. All the metal's rusted out now. It has to be replaced. To get a custom job approved to tie into the roof, how long is that going to take for it to get approved by the drawings, approved by the county, and then approved by the manufacturer to tie into that roofing system? Would be crazy. So what we can do is tie in more up to code, smaller sectioned pieces into it. But just know that if you do have skylights, if you love them, keep them. If you want to just go out in your backyard and get the natural light, that I recommend that. I think that's better. Set up a lawn chair back there, go sit out and enjoy it. If you have to keep your skylight, I see buildings that have skylights just in the walkways, not even in the homes. And I'm like, no one's hanging out on the 4th story walkway of a building, but now you have a penetration on your roof that is affecting the rest of the configuration of the roof. For what purpose, right? I've never seen anybody hanging out on the 4th story of the landing of their condo community. I could be wrong about that, but if you guys do it, correct me if I'm wrong. But when you're redoing your projects, have these considerations on how I can make my project better. And you can save some money, because if I cut those things out and just slap a piece of plywood and roof over it, it's going to be a lot cheaper than putting a new piece in. So have those considerations when you're doing that, and you're going to have better warranty options, and the roof's going to be more sealed up. So that's my 2 cents on skylights. But if you love them and you have them in a great area, that's great. Just make sure that they tie in properly with your warranty and with everything else that you want to accomplish when you're getting that project done. And make sure that you're updating them. Don't keep the old skylight on there because it was this nice custom job that I did a long time ago. Those parts and pieces wear out, and now they're touching your brand new investment, which is your roof, right? So make sure that you're getting that stuff done and taken care of properly. And that's it. That's my 2 cents on skylights. Ventilation and insulation, and this is where I'm going to wrap it up. We do have a few more slides, but I'm going to talk on this for a few minutes here, and then I'm going to allow Peggy to wrap it up. And if you guys have any questions at the end, we'll feel free to gauge those as well. But ventilation and insulation, really one of the most important parts of your roof. The manufacturers are very, very on top of your ventilation now. More commonly, you'll see if you have a good ridge line on your roof, you see that top picture, that's called a ridge vent. It goes across the top. It's very, very watertight and waterproof. It allows for maximum airflow. It's a lot more aesthetically pleasing than those off-ridge vents. Commonly now, what I see is if we take off a roof and it has off-ridge vents, and they want to go back with off-ridge vents again, they may have had 8 to 10 off-ridge vents in the past to meet current code because of their design and their size. We're going back with 15 to 20 more additional vents to reach that outtake ventilation. And it's a simple calculation based on the square footage of the roof and the attic space. So there's a lot that goes into calculating that ventilation. Make sure your contractor is calculating that ventilation properly. The first thing a manufacturer is going to do when they come out is to take a look at your soffit. Your soffit is your intake in most cases. That's where the airflow is coming into the attic, and then it's going out the top. This is going to get all that moisture and that heat out of your roof. If you don't have proper intake and outtake calculations, your warranty is void immediately. Whether they may have had defective shingles and they're blistering and popping and all that, if your ventilation's not proper, they're going to say it's because it's a furnace in your attic. You didn't do the proper ventilation. So especially on older buildings, you have to take a look at the soffit space. We find that more and more common now, that there may just be a small strip cut into the wood soffit. And sometimes it's just 2 or 3 inch sections here and there. It's not going to cover it. I can tell you right now, you have to make sure that it's checked and properly calculated. That needs to be a question that you're asking when you're doing a new project. The ventilation is super, super important. You know, we live in a very hot climate here, and we have a lot of moisture in the air. And what they found is these roofs were failing, not because the products were bad, but the same product that's installed in North Carolina is lasting 10 years longer than it is in Florida. The ventilation wasn't proper. Now that they've changed that ventilation and the codes around that, the roofs are lasting much longer and the programs are much better. So very, very key, very vital. This has to be done properly. So just make sure that you're considering that when you're doing it. A lot of people come and say, hey, Ed, you know what a great option is even though I have that great ridge vent, I'm also going to plug in a solar attic fan and install it on my roof. Please don't do that. If we've already calculated that you have the proper ventilation, adding another ventilation system that's not on the same level. So your intake wants to be on the same level and your outtake wants to be on the same level. If it's a shared attic space, if it's a separate attic space, do whatever you want. But on a shared attic space, if you put a vent below that ridge vent, you're now off counterbalancing that airflow. So instead of the air coming up and leaving the ridge vent, it's all going to come up and leave out of that additional added vent. So now you have a gap from between there and the top of the roof that's not getting proper airflow because you've now eliminated that space because the air is not coming in through the top. It's exiting through the top. So if you add something in between, you're going to counter effect what you're doing there. So you have to make sure that, I added extra ventilation, so it's better. Do not do that. Make sure that you consult a professional and talk about it prior to doing any of that stuff because the ventilation calculations are done now for a reason. If you do anything to interrupt that, again, now you're putting another penetration on your roof, voiding the warranty in that area, but you're also putting another nuance into your proper ventilation. So just make sure you're considering those things, right? Prevents moisture buildup, prevents mold, designed to meet local code requirements, right? All of these products are built for a reason. You have to make sure you're using them, make sure they're in the contracts, make sure they're in the proposals, and make sure that you're asking those questions. I am going to wrap it up there though, Peggy. I'll give you I know you need a couple minutes. You want to wrap up with them. But Ben, was there anything specifically that you wanted me to touch on that I didn't touch on there? Or does anybody else have any additional questions that they have for me or Philip at this time?
Yeah. I got to tell you, I thought I knew a little bit about roofing, but I just got schooled. So thank you so much for all that valuable information. I won't go out and start a roofing company. I'll stick to windows and doors though. So I got a couple of things here for you. Just some notes that I took along the way here. Something really important that I think you harped on at the end, and I hope everybody stayed, in tune to the very last minute is there are products that are designed specifically for use in Florida, and then products that can be used anywhere. So same thing in the window business. Someone says, hey, I had these awesome windows in Chicago. We want them in South Florida. It's not something you could do. So I really appreciate what you said about making sure that you're using a product that's specifically designed for your application. So I really appreciate you saying that. Just a recap, I was answering a couple of emails here too while we were talking, but as far as preventative maintenance, proactivity from a condominium association or a board, what are some of the things that can be done proactive, both on an annual basis or a semi-annual basis, and or in the event of a storm or after a storm? What are some of the bullet points that you can advise our audience on um, to be proactive in the event of a storm, to be post-active once a storm is done, what types of things do they need to plan for? Who should they contact, and what type of assessments should they do before and after? And also, from a maintenance standpoint, let's say there are no storms, what can people and or buildings do to, continue to get longevity out of their roof?
Absolutely. No, Ben, that's a great question. And there's a few parts there, and I'm gonna do my best to circle around all of it and get all that answered for you guys. I think that is a great point about how can we better protect these big investments that we've just made, right? We just put a brand new roofing system on, or maybe we did 5 years ago. So we do several things there. I know that a lot of associations actually have their own on-site maintenance and their own guys that they like to at least be a part of the general maintenance. So we do offer a training where we can come out. We'll go through a bullet point list of what's more common that can be taken care of by a general maintenance guy, like some specific cleanings or products or things like that. So we do offer a class that we can come out and we can train your maintenance team to do those things. We also have I forget how many points we have on the list, but it's like a 70 or 80 point list of different things depending on the community that you have and what different things you want to take care of. And it actually encapsulates all of the building itself, but very specifically to roofing as well, as far as what those proper maintenance packages look like. The importance of being on a maintenance program, I think, is key because you're being proactive rather than reactive, right? So every year if you look at it, every year you're paying $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 for roofing repairs, and half of it's caused because you didn't clean the gutters out, or you didn't clean, the leaves off the roof, or you didn't clean the roof properly every 5 years. Is that really worth it when you can be on a maintenance program for a few $1,000s a year that may include some of those basic cleanings as well, right? So every roofing system and manufacturer is going to have a different protocol for what that cleaning is and how they want to see that done. But we do have a specific package for each of those. And I think it's very, very key to be a part of that. And not to sound too salesy about it, but when you talk about having a maintenance program, everybody that's on our maintenance program is also on what we call our emergency response list. So the value of that is if a storm does hit, if a rain does happen, we have a priority list for our maintenance package programs that we can come out to you first. Look, when a hurricane hits, the last thing I'm worried about is being busy. But I do worry about taking care of the people that, one, I know their roofs very well. Two, I can help navigate for them. I already have pictures. So if there's a storm situation, I already have a full assessment of their roof. I know up to date exactly what that system looks like. So if we have to, go into an insurance claim, I can say, look, this is what the roof looked like 6 months ago. The storm just happened. Here's where we are. Claim gets approved very quickly for those people. You're not in a battle with the courts or anything like that. So there is a strong value to knowing what your roofing system looks like in the state that we're in. So being a part of one of those programs is good for preventative maintenance, keeping it clean, avoiding having to do costly repairs, but it's also going to save you a lot of time, money, and heartache on the back end when we do inevitably have a storm, because it's not an if, it's when in the state of Florida. And I think it's very important to make sure that you have yourself prepared for that. And again, we do teach a hurricane preparedness class, but as far as being a part of a maintenance program, Ben, it's vital. You know what I mean? You think of all the things you spend money on. This is something that's actually going to protect your assets and alleviate future costs and problems. It's a no-brainer to really have that as an asset in your portfolio.
Are there do these condominium associations and or homeowners associations, do they have the ability to reach out to you guys directly for an inspection?
Absolutely. Yep. So they would reach out to us directly. You have Chelsea and Phil's information. Give them a shout. anytime that you want, we'll come out and we'll do a full assessment. The assessment will be completely free the first time we come out. We're going to tell you, give you a scope of, hey, what's going on? Where are we at? And, you know, we'll do due diligence on the front end. We'll ask a bunch of questions about the property and what you have going on, what's gone on in the past, so we can have a good understanding of it. We'll send out inspectors to take a look at everything. And based off that, and, you know, we'll make it, you know, a custom plan designed as to what you want to be part of your program. Do you want cleaning? Do you just want preventative maintenance? Do you want, you know, scoped repair estimates each time? Do you want it annually or biannually, right? So everything you check off, you can add as much as you want to the list or as little as you want to the list. But I think it's important to make sure that you are continually checking these assets, especially for communities that have a lot of penetrations, or they have, you know, AC units on the roof, or they have people working on the roof regularly. If you're thinking about getting your roof cleaned, please make sure you reach out to us. We can see what manufacturer we have and what recommended products they recommend for those. You can't just have anybody just come clean your product without it being an approved product and it being you know, okay with the manufacturer. Just went out to a project the other day, and again, there's nothing wrong with the cleaning as long as it's done properly, right? We just went out to a project the other day. The association told me that they had it soft washed. We go out there and they power wash the shingles, and there's no granules on any of the shingles on 4 buildings. And they want to know what we can do about it.
Right.
Put new roofs on. You know, that's all you can do, right? So you just have to be careful that you know what you're doing and what you're cleaning with.
That's great. You know, some of the biggest, you know, I'd say one of the biggest concerns, if not the greatest, is, hey, I have a problem, you know, with my, let's call it a roof. You know, I have a problem with my concrete, but specific to roofs, hey, I have a problem with my roof. I know I have a problem with it. I don't have the money to fix it. You know, so it's really great that Michelle's on this call, on this webinar, and some other industry professionals like an engineer we had on earlier, where, you know, I'm a big believer in setting up your team, you know, to be able to do some of these improvements and or enhancements to your building, not only to protect yourselves, but also to increase the value of your property.
And you can also keep them on record at the website that Vinteum can provide.
That's all I got from the chat here. But Michelle, go ahead.
Just quickly, I just would say start this process early. If you even think you need funding, whether it's coming from special assessments and or a loan, you still have to figure out if you're going, you may just have to special assess, but if you need funds over a period of time, those special assessments are proceeds to a loan. So you need to start that process early, because a loan closing could take 30 to 45 days, even longer, depending on all the things that are involved in the loan process. But if you're even thinking about it, start talking to banks now so that you can have that lined up, because I know that your contractors, your roofers, we've worked with Stratus on other projects, that they want to make sure that you have the funding to get your project started. So we work with different terms and conditions. So always happy to address questions for anybody, even if we're not considered. So.
Perfect. Philip, anything you want to say?
I'm pretty happy to be here. Thank you, guys.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I'll wrap it up then and let Ed take a breather there from talking for 2 hours almost and maybe a quick drink. But thank you so much. It was very, very informative. I'm like Ben, it's like all new information. Some of it was new, and how deep it is to know all those details. And you know, boards change, and sometimes all the information doesn't get transferred from one board to the next. My suggestion also is to keep a record, you know, keep it in the same spot, you know, file and so on. Every single receipt, whatever you do with your roof, keep it there handy so everybody can pull it and look at it. I just want to mention that there are some upcoming webinars that I'm organizing on April 24th, which is next Wednesday. I've got the paving lady presenting solutions and information for asphalt. Also on April 30th, I've got Paul Overton. He's organized a Overton Network. I'm helping him with. He does a 1-month construction defect or construction law, something to do with construction. On the 30th, he's going to cover DSS Condo is going to be talking on project management, and they are owner representatives. Moving into May 1st, I've got United Professional Engineers. They're doing a class on concrete restoration and the law updates. And then on May 15th, I have a hurricane summit. So mark your calendars and look for the flyers. And I appreciate everybody's participation, my sponsors. Thank you so much. Thank you, Michelle, for staying on. And again, Vinteum for the winds beneath my wings. All right. Have a nice
Peggy.
weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thank you.